exactly now?
There might be some changes in the clock times in the computers.
And now the recording is on.
If we could wait for a few minutes that Helga is joining us and then begin.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah. No.
Okay,
now
okay.
I think that we all who should be here, they are here. And hello to everybody, and warmly welcome to this meeting for creating new ideas to collaborate in future. And my name is Raija Kallioinen, and I work as a producer in the Association for Rural Culture and Education, and it's a terrible name, and we call it shortly MSL. So when we use that MSL, it means our organization. And I hope that you all could open your cameras for a while and twinkle to each other so that we can see our faces. Lovely. And in the smaller discussion groups, then you can introduce yourself more precisely, but this is now only the winkle. And thanks a lot. And I have a pleasure to know most of you because of your very active role in EOA, the European Outsider Art Association. And EOA is our common, very important network. And we used to meet each other regularly in our annual events. And unfortunately, because of COVID pandemic, we haven't had live meetings for a long time. And the next possibility to meet each other by EOA seems to be as far as next June here in Finland. But it's very important to keep the connections alive in spite of the pandemic. And that's why you are invited to this network for planning together what kind of cooperation we could do in future. The first impulse for inviting you was that Serlachius Museums contacted us, MSL, with a question if Outsider Art and ITE Art could have a stronger role in the programs of the European Capital of Culture, especially with Tampere City in 2026, if it will win. We will hear today what happened in the competition and what kind of use there can be after losing. We have invited you to common conversation in 4 webinars during 2 years. In the webinars, there will be short talks, presentations by the network members, and thematical discussions in smaller groups. The Erasmus Plus program by EU has given a small funding to prepare these events, these webinars, together with MSL, with GAIA Museums from Denmark, and with Kondas Center from Estonia. GAIA Museum has a fresh experience of collaboration with City of Aarhus when it was the European Capital of Culture in 2017. Kondas Center will be involved with the plans of Tartu when it has the ECOC title in 2024. As well, we know that Ghent is applying this status of ECOC in 2030, and maybe Museum Dr. Gisland will be in focus then. So we have a network also with relationships to ECOC program. We believe that with this network, we have an excellent ability and a strong motivation to push outsider art for more essential role in European cultural capitals and widely also to European cultural life. But first, we must know each other better and talk more together. And this is the reason why we are online now. This discussion today are hosted by Helka Ketonen, who is the Cultural Director of MSL, and Pauli Sivonen, who is the Director of Serlachius Museums and who really well knows the whole process of ECOC title and ECOC program. Before giving the floor to Pauli for his opening speech, my colleague Sofia will give some instructions by the technical support. From my side, thank you everybody for joining the webinar, and let's have a nice day with many new ideas and refreshing our knowing each other. Welcome. And now Sofia, please.
Thank you, Raija. I'm your technical support today, and I work as an educational designer in MSL. And if you have any technical problems, I will help. And I put my number on the chat, and you can call me or write it on the chat. I will, and Suvi will help, my colleague, also. And please, you have already muted your microphones. Yes, that's great. And you can have your camera on if there's enough network here, but please note that your video is shown on the recording. And next, I also had to say that if you have any questions to the speakers, please, you can have questions after the presentations and raise your hand. And you can raise your hand from the control bar of the Teams. And now I think it's time for Pauli next.
Yes, thank you so much. I guess you can hear me okay. Yes, so dear friends, my name is Pauli Sivonen and I represent Serlachius Museums in Mäntä, Vilppula, Finland. And later today I will tell you more about Serlachius, so I will not introduce our institution here, but will go straight to the point. Outsider art as a part of the European cultural life is the headline of this brief introduction to our webinar. I think we will be today speaking very much about networking, about European cooperation in the many fields of outsider art, and of course about the current situation of outsider art in different parts of our continent in general. And actually, Serlachius Museums has been collaborating very actively with MSL, that is the Finnish Association of Rural and Cultural Education, for a long time. The latest common project has taken place in connection with the city of Tampere's bid to become one of the European capitals of culture in 2026. We have been an important partner in developing their flagship project, A Self-Made Life, Art on the Outside. Sadly, in the beginning of this month, Tampere lost the competition and the city of Oulu in northern Finland was chosen to be the European Capital of Culture in 2026. We will later today tell more about the project Art on the Outside and its current status. No matter what happened in the competition, I think we should somehow continue the project and especially keep on developing the important networks that the Finnish Association of Rural Culture and Education has activated to implement the project. And of course, the loss of this one competition does not mean that we here in Finland would not be interested in European networks working in the field of outsider art. On the contrary, this has been, is, and will be a key priority for us. In more general terms, what should we discuss when speaking about outsider art as part of the cultural life of our continent? Before this seminar, we asked you about this. What kind of ideas or expectations do you have for strengthening European cooperation on the field of outsider art and contemporary folk art? Do you have some practical experiences to share with others? That was our main question. And you have answered in many different ways. Many of you want to discuss especially networking processes. How do our European networks make us stronger together? And what should we do with these networks? Residencies, sharing best practices, implementing projects together. There are many possibilities. Some of you are especially interested in processes in which exhibitions are exchanged and toured, also including events programs with lectures and workshops. Curating processes interest you, and here you want to recognize differences between contemporary and historical practices. More generally, the role of institutions interests you. How can they, for example, establish processes and structures that limit the disabling mechanisms currently in place so that all artists could work in equal ways? A very special question touches, on the other hand, the very identity of us and our institutions. Do we still need this sorting out between mainstream museums and museums, galleries and art centers that work mainly in the field of outsider art? Some of you indeed represent museums that work in many other fields of art than just outsider art. I would like to thank you all for these interesting questions, and I'm sure that we will have plenty of time today to find answers to them together. And I'm sure we all are very much interested in hearing all the practical experiences that you have concerning these issues, both in your own countries and in connection with the networks that you have in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauli. Thank you very much. And thank you all. I can see that we are, 24? It was last time. Let's see how many we are now. We are a huge group of people here. So nice to see you all here. Some of you I have met. Some of you I have not met during my 8 years as a director of cultural affairs here in Association for Rural Culture and Education in Finland. So I'm the partner with Raija, who you all know very well. So my task is to keep us in the schedule and give time for each presentations. And then in the afternoon, after a small break, we will break into 3 groups for more intense discussions. But in the beginning, we will have 3 presentations and of organizations of Finland who will present themselves. First, I will go, then will be Pauli, and then in the small break there will be well, anyway, it will come. And let's do it so that after the 3 presentations you will have the time for questions. And if you have questions, please also you can write them down to the chat, and so we will collect from there and then pinpoint out the questions there. So let's go in my presentation. As you know, this is, can you Suvi or Sofia, do you see my presentation now? Not yet? All right. There was Sofia who was supposed to share it.
I think it was it Suvi?
Okay. Anyway, I start and Suvi will dig it out from somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sharing it at the moment, but it doesn't seem to.
And
I do it again.
And we have sent this presentation already for you. And if not everybody has got it yet, you will get it later. So this is a good overall presentation of what we actually do here in association.
Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you, Suvi. So next slide. The background of our association, we were founded, 60 years ago in 1952. And with our domain, we cover adult education and cultural work in the whole Finland. And also we have been very international. We have done and we are doing international productions, and we are dealing with different art scenes. We highlight the self-taught artist, which we call ITE artists in Finland. And another cultural theme is our cultural work. Another part, what we do with artists, is our environmental art. So ITE art and environmental artists, that's how we deal our work here in our association. The next slide, please. Today, we can divide our work in two main lines or fields. The first one is the survey of ITE artists and environments, which we have done for over 20 years now. We have surveyed ITE environments nationwide. We only have the most southern tip not surveyed yet, but we are working gradually towards it. And we have also published during those 20 years, 24 ITE publications, nowadays also in English versions and on web. Current surveys we have at the moment in Häme, which is in the southern part of Finland, and North Savo, which is on the east coast in the central Finland. So very actively we are continuing surveying new artists and environments in Finland. And I believe this is quite a unique way to do it in any countries. And then we have the ITE art collections. Our collections is the largest of its kind, and it's very unique because many of the artists have already deceased, and the environments may have disappeared, but we have done a very good job in documenting, both in videos and in photographs. So we have a good documentations of the places and of the artists and of their ideas of their work. Our collection includes approximately 2,000 sculptures, paintings, drawings, and installations. And the collection is saved and in good hands in Kokkola Art Museum, Koho Renlund Art Museum. Next slide, please. This is a new initiative what we created in 2020. We were thinking that how could we highlight our artists better? How could we break the news better? And we decided to launch this Artist of the Year, ITE Artist of the Year. So each year in the January we give the glory to one ITE artist. And we very much then during the year we work on different occasions where this artist can deliver her and his artworks. We work closely with press media, local municipalities, and so on. So the first one was Paula Huhtanen on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side. And she's actually participating in this seminar here. Hello, Paula. Nice to have you here. And this year, the Artist of the Year is Jori Tapio Kalliola, who is both a musician, self-taught, self-learned musician, and a sculptor. And both of these artists have gained a lot of attention through the media, the main head news, the main newspapers, the local newspapers, radio programs. It's an unbelievable what kind of how well the audience and the press have taken these two artists. And we of course hope to work continuously with them, like Paula Huhtanen plays a big role in 2021 programs with us. The next slide. Okay, the international network. The European Cultural Capital has been a very big initiative now for the last almost 2 years. And as Pauli already mentioned, the European Capital for 2026 was it was won by Oulu, but not only the Oulu city, but also 32 different municipalities on the northern side of Finland. So whole the Lapland from the west coast to the eastern border of Finland is included in that program. So very interesting program is coming. The Art on the Outside program or scheme that we developed with Tampere, Mäntä Vilppula and Pauli Sivonen is now in a debate on how can we still work on it regardless that we didn't get the millions that the winner would have got. So, but we have lots of ideas, and we will definitely continue also with the scheme of Art on the Outside. And the aim of the Art of the Outside is that outside art and ITE art becomes an important part of the contemporary art scene. That seems to be a very crucial notion at the moment here in Finland. Important goals for us is to strengthen our mutual European partners for the European Cultural Funds. We need European Cultural Funds to survive, to develop our network. We have programs in Tampere, Pirkanmaa, and we have programs also with ITE Art in the European Cultural Capital Oulu 2026. Oh, sorry, next slide, Suvi. Yeah, this is the projects with Tampere and Oulu. And next slide. And here you can see your logos and our logos. This is just in one glance to see how many and how powerful we are with all these bubbling and very active organizations in Europe. And the next slide. Can you get the next slide, Suvi? We have the timeline for us there. Suvi, then there you are. Okay, so this is the timeline until 2026, and here you can see that today we have what we have. We have here, oh yeah, the ECOC background. You can see here who has won the ECOC capital before us, and who is coming next. So there is Tartu, Estonia, and Tampere. You can see here on the bottom. Tampere program will begin in 2022 and run into 24, and then the ECOC, the main year, will be 2026. So, but we see all your you on the line, so we have to work together. This is the idea. We are not alone. We need you. Outside Art needs all of us together. That's how we feel at the moment. So far, so good. Thank you. And I give the floor to Pauli again, and you will present more of the Selakius museums.
Thank you, Raija. I will try to share my slides. Just a moment. Can you see it now?
Yes, Pauli, we can see it well.
Okay, and the slides are changing. Are
Not
they?
yet. No.
You are still on the first slide.
Yeah, we can see the first big slide and then the small ones on the left-hand side.
Okay, then I have to.
No, there was some. Now it's changing. Yeah.
Now it's changing.
Here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Seems for some reason that when I put the slide presentation on, it doesn't work. I'd like to have it like a presentation, but yeah, let's do it that way.
It seems to be very slow at the moment, but
Yeah,
we manage.
It's quite good. It's
yeah.
good.
Okay, we'll go like that. So Selakius Museums, we are not an outsider art institution, but more like a, how do you say, mainstream art institution and museum. And I will now present you our what we are doing here in Mänttävilppula. And so yes, we are here in Mänttävilppula. We call it Art Town. Actually, it's also an industrial town. As you see in the photo, it's in the middle of forest. Someone would say in the middle of nowhere. It's just huge forests and then these mills and a small community of 10,000 inhabitants. And we have a story behind our museum. You see here this family, G.A. Selakius. He came to Mänttä in 1860s and established his paper mills here. He was also a keen lover of arts and collected Finnish art, Finnish contemporary art of his time. And then this other guy, Gösta Selakius, he was his nephew, and he made the small local paper mill a big company that owned mills also in other parts of Finland. Later, Selakius company also went to abroad and had mills in Sweden and Poland and Germany and so on. Nowadays, Selakius family is not involved anymore in industry, but they have their legacy here in Mänttä, which is Selakius Museums. And I start to tell you a little bit about our collections. The collection is based on, there are quite many like European masterpieces from 15th century onwards. You see here Claude Monet's Haystack from 1891, which is probably like the most important artwork in the collection. But mostly we are concentrating on what we call Finnish Golden Age art. It's late 19th, early 20th century art, paintings, sculptures from the time that Finland became independent. This is one example, just Helen Schärfbeck, a girl with red hair, 1915. We also have a quite large collection of early modernism. And then we are also collecting contemporary art, both Finnish and foreign. Just one example, one of the latest acquisitions, Anselm Kiefer's Väinämöinen Ilmarinen from 2018. It's actually about our own mythology, Kalevala, that Anselm Kiefer is studying here. He's been working, making a series of Kalevala paintings lately. So it's old masters of Finnish and European art, but nowadays we also are very much interested in new approaches to contemporary art. This is Eija-Liisa Ahtila, Finnish video artist, contemporary artist, probably the most well-known Finnish contemporary artist of today. And about the exhibitions, we make something like 6 changing exhibitions a year. These are like the foreign exhibitions from Kiefer to Banksy and everything in between. Most of our exhibitions, of course, are Finnish artists, and mostly we do exhibitions about contemporary art nowadays, so that we have our permanent collection displayed in the museum, but most of the exhibitions are contemporary art. Just some pictures from some of our recent exhibitions. This is Finnish contemporary artist Marita Liulia and her exhibition Golden Age. Riiko Sakkinen, another Finn who made an exhibition about European refugee crisis a few years ago. And Anselm Kiefer, we actually had a big exhibition from a private collection that was, I think, 5 years ago or something like that. Martin Wallinger, British artist, Koen van Mechelen from Belgium, and Roger Ballen, he's from United States but based in South Africa nowadays. He asked us to remove an entire building into our gallery a few years ago. And right now what we have in our floor right now is Banksy, a visual protest, an exhibition more about Banksy than his exhibition. You probably know that he doesn't like it very much that museums are making Banksy exhibitions, so-called Banksy exhibitions. And here you see our art museum, what it looks like from an aerial photo. This is the old part, the manor house as we call it. It's mostly devoted to our own collection, and this is the pavilion. We call it a pavilion, although it's much larger than the old part, and there we are organizing these changing exhibitions. Just some photos from outside, a winter photo, then our restaurant, of which we are very proud. And then we actually have another museum also, so it's Serlachius Museums, Gösta and Gustav. I just presented you Gösta, and this is Gustav. It's situated in former headquarters of the Serlachius Forest Company, and it's telling the industrial story of Serlachius family and Mäntä in general, and maybe also in more general ways story of industry in Finland. We use quite much theater-like scenes in our exhibitions and modern technology. But we also organize art exhibitions there, somehow trying to mix the identities of the two museums, art museum and historical museums. This is Elina Broterus, Finnish photographic artist. It's a beautiful place, architecturally important building from 1930s. And we are try to be quite active in this museum, organizing, for example, dramatized tours. This is an example in which this lady is hiring people to serve the Serlachius company. And these are, of course, museum visitors hoping to get a job in a museum or in the company. And organizing paper workshops. Mäntä mills are paper mills, so paper is important for us. And we also have a residency, Serlachius residency. The upper picture shows the place where the artists are living, and the lower picture is the gallery and working premises for the artists. We host about 20 artists a year. Half of them are normally Finns, half of them come from abroad, and they spend here something between 1 month and six months, and most of them also have an exhibition here when they are leaving. So about our relationship to outsider art, as I said, we are like a mainstream art museum, but we've had some projects lately concerning outsider art, and the biggest of these was 2050's The Art of Others, outsider art from the collection of Corine and Max E. Ammon's collection. Why we did this? We wanted to kind of give global background for the Finnish ITE art phenomenon, because the Finns really know ITE art and what is happening here with this field, but international outsider art has not been presented so much in Finland, so we wanted to make this exhibition. We made this together with Turgau Museum of Fine Arts. It was created by Markus Landert, and the exhibition traveled also to Erfurt, Lille and Sable-d'Olonne. Actually, it was first in Erfurt and Lille, and later we developed it together with Turgau Museum. And it also included an international seminar, which we made in cooperation with MSL. And we published a new book about the collection, Max Ammon's collection. At the same year, we also had some outsider artists from Finland and Sweden in our residency, working there for a short period. And next year we had one Finnish outsider artist, Markku Valtonen, who is known here in Finland as Make, and that was organized in Gustav Museum. And we have continued our cooperation with MSL and planning Tampere 26 flagship project, Self-Made Life Art on the Outside, was of course the most important thing lately. Just some pictures of our outsider art exhibitions. These are from Max Ammon's collection, and this is Make. And actually we have right now some outsider or some ITE art in our garden. This is Alpo Koivumäki, who has some sculpture in the island that is facing our museum. So this is Serlacchius. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pauli. Very nice to learn all the background, and I'm sure that not everybody has visited your museum yet, but hopefully in a very short while we will all come and meet you there. So now we have one more presentation for 10 minutes for Hans Löyen, and then we will have 10 minutes hopefully for discussions, and then we will have a break. So bear in, and if you need to stretch there, so just do some exercises, because sitting on one spot in these hot days, it's quite tough. But Hans Löyen, floor is yours.
Yes, hello, hi, thank you. I see many names I recognize, I see some faces even. So thank you for being with me. Can someone start in the presentation, please?
Yes, Sofia is already
Okay.
started. It's still downloading, just a minute,
okay,
but you
great.
can start.
Yes. So my name is Hans Löyen. I'm the director of the Museum of the Mind in the Netherlands. I'm a museologist by training. And actually we have two museums, the Museum of the Mind in Haarlem, which is to the west of Amsterdam, 15 minutes by train. And it's the original Haarlem. There's not a Haarlem, New York, which was once founded by Dutch settlers. And our second museum, that's what we're going to talk about today, is in Amsterdam at the Hermitage, and it's on outside art. The first museum we opened in 2005, and it mainly contains collections from former psychiatric museums, smaller ones, which were put together in one building, which we just renovated, and which was opened by Queen Maxima in between lockdowns in November 2020. So we're very proud of that, and please come and visit us one day. So can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Well, you probably all been or heard of the Biennale Venice 2013. This was the big change in the Netherlands. We started out with a big exhibition on Japanese outsider art in 2012 in the museum in Haarlem with Shinichi Sawada, which is absolutely one of my favorites. And I came across his art in Paris, no less. I went to Paris in 2010. I stepped down the train and I found out there was a huge exhibition in Hall Saint-Pierre, a lovely place, of course. And I was literally blown away by what I saw. And I have to admit to you, before I stayed away a bit from outsider art, because in the Netherlands it was presented for social reasons mainly, and it was so good for the artists, and there was a lot, but it was not about quality, and it was not organized, and it was, well, as I say, it was, for me, presented for the wrong reasons. So I stayed away from it, but after Paris, I thought, this is great, I have to look into this. So we went to Japan and put together a new collection, which then we presented in 2012 in Haarlem. Can I have the next slide, please? Yes, which resulted in a museum of its own on outsider art, which was opened in 2016. Next slide, please. Here at the Hermitage in Amsterdam, this is a huge building at the Amstel River. Of course, you all know that Amsterdam gets its name from a dam in the Amstel River. This is next to the river, and it used to be a Protestant home for elderly ladies from the 17th century. And this is a dependance of the Hermitage in St. Petersburg. So they have huge collections over on different themes. Now they have knights and the Romanovs. So not only the shining armors, but also the romantic notions in the 19th century of chivalry and etc. And we have the wing on the left of this image on the ground floor. And on the first floor, there's a dependance of the Amsterdam Museum with huge portraits of regents like the Night Watch from Rembrandt. There's many more such paintings in the Netherlands, more formal, and they're too big to show in any museum, so they have their own space here. The next slide, please. Yeah, oh yeah, you can see Maxima, and we were admiring Sawada, which was on loan, and part of it is now part of our collection. So next slide, please. Yes. So the exhibitions and the program. So since 2012, we worked together to investigate the infrastructure in the Netherlands, because there was a lot, but also I wanted to find out who can we work with, what would they think if we would establish a place of its own in the Netherlands. So from 2013 to 15, we did open calls and we investigated the network, and we created an exhibition program called Essentials, because I discovered, and many of you know this, that is an absolutely must for many artists to create. It's essential for them to create work. And so we tried to bring an overview of Dutch artists, workshops and ateliers, and their work. So next slide, please. And we opened with that, a part of that collection, again with the Japan exhibition, because not many people had seen it in the first round in 2012. In the meantime, it had traveled to the Wacom collection in London, and many of the artists also went to Monica in Swiss. So it was great that it was seen in so many places in Europe. And for me, one of the reasons to bring this art is because part of it was at the Biennale in Venice, and all the Dutch art critics and museum specialists were talking about that. They finally had their aha moment, like, oh, okay, if you present it like this, if you select this quality, then it is part of our cultural landscape, so to speak. And I wanted to show that we had the same quality in the Netherlands, which was overlooked for the wrong reasons, and that we have to step up in the Netherlands to be at pace with what was happening internationally. We were at a standstill at that moment. Can I have the next slide, please? So what we did as a program, first Japan, the unquestioned qualities which are in there. Next to it, I was in China for the first time in 2012, and we established contact with several people there in Nanjing and other places, Beijing. And we brought over a collection, and we collected part of it to show what is happening in an emerging, unexpected place from views of the art world. Nobody was thinking in the Netherlands at that moment that China was a place where this art would come from, let alone they were still maybe a shock and awe of us opening and showing in Japan. So I wanted to keep up the pace and show that the art canon is much more broader than what we know. You know, of course, but the art world in the Netherlands, we really had to shake them and wake them up, because I think this art is a disruption of art history. The art history is too theoretical for me, and it has moved away from essence of art in many places, in many cases. So we have a drive. Next slide, please. Great that we could loan this. Thomas is here, thank you. The Dubuffet list, the great exhibition by the Princeton collection. Of course, this is the mother of all collections in Europe, let alone, I think, maybe in the world. And it's not only an important milestone and reference collection, but also Thomas is still collecting. And so it's a very important collection. And to go back to what Dubuffet did when visiting that collection and forming his own theoretical ideas is very important also within the discussion of the sense of place of outside art. And this came at the same moment that the Rijksmuseum was having a big exhibition in their gardens with sculptures of Dubuffet, and the Stedelijk Museum were doing an overview of works they have in the collection by Dubuffet. So we place ourselves in the midst of that program at that moment. The next slide, please. New masters. On the right, the photo is Lionel Pluck. Many people thought that it was about maybe colonial and decolonialization and Black awareness. It was not. It was on these new masters we have in the Netherlands. And this was a bit of a pun because the Hermitage Amsterdam showed Dutch masters from the Hermitage, St. Petersburg at the same moment. So we had Rembrandt on the left, we had our masters on the right. So we have a first time a bit daring, we had portraits combined with works of the artists. Not everybody was in favor of it, but I think it was very strong because it gives you a very strong idea of the characters of the makers. And of course, it's not about the biography with us at all. But at the same time, this worked very well for us because we started kind of a talent scout program. So the photographer went to many places and many people, talked to artists, talked to ateliers, to artists, and he got new tips. We went there, we established contact and widened the selection in that sense. Can I have the next slide, please? Yes, and then ITE Art in 2018, we just heard what it is. I didn't know what it was. And I was very thrilled that we could have a selection of the Max and Corinne Amann collection from Switzerland. And for me, was very fitting. We created a little cabin to create some of the feel of that many of the artists is created literally outside any cultural domain. And for me, it's important because I want to investigate the borders of our field. What is it? What does it contain? What is the core? Which is the essence? And we all come from different cultural backgrounds. So we have different views on the role of art or artists and the way it is connected to what we experience. And in Finland, it's very prominent. The own culture is very prominent, which you can see here. And of course, it was just mentioned, there's also folk art and self-taught art. So what are the boundaries of our field? And I find it very inspiring that we could show this. Of course, Max Arman, he's into horses, so we had a lot of horses, which is good, because you can also see that a collection is formed by preferences of the people collecting. Next slide, please. So we're very fortunate to have this exhibition, which contains the jewels of the Collection d'Arbru from Lausanne. I can't see Sarah here, but thank you again for loaning this great exhibition. She was a curator, Sarah Lombardi, for this great exhibition, which had Eloise, which had well, the pearls. And so for the Dutch public, it was very important to get connected and to discover, as to speak, these artists in this collection. Next slide, please. Yes, and of course, Willem van Genk. We had to do something with Willem van Genk. I discovered during the preparations of this exhibition that Dubuffet, again, he wrote to the director of the Stedelijk in his time and said, wow, I've heard something about Willem van Genk, and maybe you should look into it because he's great. Willem van Genk was offered for the collection of Dubuffet, and he hesitated and he didn't do it in the end. Van Genk, he's Dutch, he's well known, he's an absolute public favorite. The Rijksmuseum now holds a painting by him, owned by the state. We have the other one. And the Fondation Willem van Genk associated with us, with the museum. This was a totally different take on the art and the exhibitions for us. It was created by Walter van Bierendonk. He's a famous Flemish fashion designer and absolute fan of Van Genk. And he created this kind of environment more. Let you see some biography, family photos, pictures, but only what is there, what was there. And to the right, many international loans, and thank you all for cooperating. And those who saw it, it was a great exhibition. Thank you again. It's now in Lausanne, and it will travel to St. Petersburg to the Hermitage in June next year. So whole Finland, you hop on a train and you go there and you can see it yourself. You'll, around the corner. Next slide, please. And Neil Masters is now traveling. It's now in China, in Hainan, in Flower Island. There's a huge museum island which is created and just opened, and one museum is dedicated to the outer art. It's completely new. So let's explore together what we can do, what we can bring there. They asked us to be in the lead, to be their connection, but I happily work with you all to bring our great art to places like this. Next slide, please. Yes, and now this is what we have at the moment. It's almost 10 years of collecting. We called it For the Love of Art. The first exhibition, 2012, we were donated a private fund to collect. We are a non-governmental funded museum, so we have to look for money, as all of you have to do. This couple came up and donated this fund, and we started collecting. This is an overview. This is some of the collection, and we, next slide, please, combined it with Chicago Calling, Dubuffet again, who went to the United States, gave a lecture in Chicago, and people there in the Arts Club thought, oh, Arbru, that is what we are doing. That is why we are collecting folk art. And they started looking for artists in Chicago to collect, many of whom are of color. And so you see a lot of black artists in this exhibition. Mr. Imagination, The Throne, we loaned this from Hals and Pierre. Thank you again. As a huge overview, and again, it's what at the borders of our field, is it overflowing? Where do we stop? Where do we start? This is always a question, of course, in our field. but the black artist, that part is of course very important. We are already bringing people who are not heard in the cultural field, and from the United States point of view, of course, black culture is very important. I don't have to explain, especially in this age and time and age. I raised through my last few images because I'm maybe out of time. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, next slide, please. Next one, please.
Sorry, it's downloading a bit.
Oh, okay. So this is some of the collections. The first piece I could acquire, Richard C. Smith. This is one of the artists came forward from Essentials, Lionel Pluck. If you have a chance, well, look into him. He's great. Sawada, you know, Van Genk. The Japanese artist Watanabe, he creates these animals from leaves. Only in fall, when the leaves are fresh, he can fold them. So it's a whole circus. It's great. So she's from Genk, which is a place in Belgium. Great views, tapestries. Carol Bailey from Switzerland. We see the broadness of our collection. There's Willem Maurits Sterkenburg. Danish art on the left from our own Rasmussen, and to the right Joachim, which you have the choice, you can take this with us. So thank you, and I look forward to discuss with you how we can create a meaningful program for all of us, and to work together with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hans. Very, very interesting. I am very lucky to have visited your museum at the ITE exhibition. We were a group of Finns there. Lovely museum, great collections, and great stuff what you have there. So interesting. Thank you. All right. So then we have a time maybe for a few questions. If you have any in your mind, specifically now for any of us. Three of us from Pauli, Helka, or Hans. Are there any questions in the chat, Suvi? See, no on the chat.
Moment, no.
Okay, so yeah, silence. All right. Anyway, I think we are looking forward to the final discussions there in the smaller groups where we can go more in deep to these ideas. But Hans, you brought up some very, very good, interesting notions of the outside art compared to the mainstream art, the visual mainstream art. It's very interesting to discuss that later. All right, so let's have a small break. Let's continue like in 12:05. So that gives us time for 6 minutes to have a break, stretch a bit, and come back. So 12:05. We see you here again. See you soon. Onko hyvä taustakuva?
Joo, tää on tää meidän toimisto.
Hey, we are early. There's
Wow.
2 minutes till to go.
1 minute.
We're quick.
I just wanted to test my microphone. Is it working? Can people hear me?
I can't
Yes,
hear you.
perfectly.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Very good.
Okay.
I think Helga can't hear us, and Helga's sound is very low.
Right.
I think Helga, you don't hear.
Sounds like everyone else can. Hey, Hans.
Helga, could you say something? Or is your microphone on now?
We can chat. We have 2 more minutes. We can be creative and just chat with each other. See how many we are here. Sorry. It was me. Yeah, we can chat. We have 2 more minutes to go. One more minute. I must tell that we have a huge hot spell here in Finland. I was just checking from the window in the shade. There was 28 degrees. Imagine what it is in the sun for us. And I'm living by the sea. So it's
Use sunscreen. Okay.
yeah. I changed the screen. I'm by the sea, Baltic Sea now. I'm actually there. I can see it there. Yeah. 1 more minute, so we'll hold on. We're very eager to continue.
It's time here.
Is it? Oh, it's 1 minute less here. Time zone.
Sofia,
Right.
did you test the microphone by calling?
Yes, we already tested.
Yeah,
And
great.
excellent.
No, seems to be working.
Yes,
Great.
Colin, we can hear you. Excellent. Okay, so here we are back in the presentations. We have 1 more presentation. No, two more presentations. First, Esa and Henri from the Finnish Arts Promotion Center will present their work on a video, and then Professor Colin Rhodes will have the final word before we break into the groups. So please, Esa and Henri from the video.
Good morning or good noon, whatever the time might be in various time zones, and I bring you greetings to this seminar from Arts Promotion Center Finland. My name is Henri Terho. I'm working as a special advisor in the section of visual arts, and I'm responsible for whatever happens around visual arts committee. And I'm also acting as the chair of Finnish State Art Commission, which means that I'm responsible for purchasing and acquisitions of works of art for the state of Finland in various locations wherever art is needed in the facilities of the government. I've been following rather closely the area of outsider art, let's say around since 2010 or something like that. And I've been acquainted with many of the examples we have in Finland. And I have to say that often when I'm looking and visiting the sites of outsider art in Finland, I'm quite interestingly making comparisons between what outsider art today in Finland means and what are the kind of bridges and comparisons with the visual arts in general. And I see many overlapping themes that come from both sides of the border, so to say. I can see many kind of inspirations that various fields of visual arts are getting from outside the art field, and that is quite interesting when looking at the broad field of visual arts in general. A kind of more precise angle for my near past is that we have a system in our agency that various regional arts councils are making proposals as for the next regional artists that what we would need in our organization. And back in 2000, I think it was 16 or 17 or something like that, in our Regional Arts Council of Satakunta in western part of Finland, the Arts Council actually made a proposal for Arts Promotion Center Finland that what we would need is a regional artist working with outsider art. And I would say that's no coincidence coming from Satakunta, because as you might already know, that is one of the areas in Finland where outsider art is very visible and very inspiring. And we have many examples of outsider art in the region of Satakunta. And due to that process, regional artist Esa Vienamo was appointed as the first ever regional artist working in the field of outsider art in our agency. And I have to say that that has been an important step also when thinking of our role in terms of outsider art. And with these words, I'm greeting again you, the participants of this seminar, and I'm handing over to Esa Vienamo to continue this opening speech. So go ahead, Esa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Terho. Yes, my name is Esa Vienamo. I'm working in Arts Promotion Center Finland as Finland's first ever regional artist for outsider art. And as some of you may know, I've been previously working at Kettuki Art Center. That was about 10 years ago. But what I'm doing now at Arts Promotion Center, it's something quite different. Well, TAIKE is not an art center with artists. Instead, I'm working in a governmental office with about 70 colleagues. And definitely there has not been any models for me telling what my role should be in the field of outsider art. And also internationally, I think I may be the first one to have this kind of role or position in our art field. But in my position, it's quite important to see and understand the big picture. For me, one important role and goal is to help self-taught artists or artists with mental disabilities make successful careers in art field. Other goal is to create new connections and also to work for better equality and better diversity. And of course, I can also act as a link between artists, art centers, and financial funders of art and culture. And of course, in TAIKE, we are very interested in all international cooperation. So it's very nice to be here now. So I want to wish everyone here a very interesting webinar from my side. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Esa and Henry. And actually, Esa is here among us. Can you wave us? Can you say hello? You are online.
Yes, hello. Here I'm also live here today, but Henry is having a vacation today, so now I'm alone in this webinar. Thanks.
So which group will you be attending in the afternoon?
It's the third group. I can't remember the exact name, but the third one.
All right. Great, excellent. Okay, so then we have Professor Colin Rhodes next.
Okay.
Are we ready? Yes.
Yeah, I need to try to share my screen, so hopefully that will come through. If you hang on just a sec.
Oh, no problem.
So usual things. Hopefully this will allow me to share. Is that coming through or not?
Not yet.
No. Let's try this. No?
Not yet.
It should be It's saying that I can share it, but nothing's
You
come
could see
through.
something when you were trying first, but only black screen, but maybe it was the right button.
There's a PowerPoint that it should be showing. It's saying that it's coming through. Sorry about this.
It took a while. It's very lazy today for me too, so maybe we can wait just a minute and you can maybe start.
Okay.
If we can see the downloading screen, or if that's not working, you can send it to email for me, and I think I don't have your presentation yet.
No, I just thought that it would share. Okay. Desktop window. Does you see anything or?
Not yet.
No. Okay. It's not.
I did have some problem today earlier when sharing with window or sharing with screen. So if you share it with screen, it might be easy.
Which I'm just who do I send this to if I'm going to email it?
I'll put my email on the chat just to...
Okay. We should have done this in the break, I suppose.
In the meantime, if you still want to sort of work it out there, let's take a look at the afternoon or the group discussions. So the first group is museum staff and curators on the theme, and then the second one, art studios, and the third one, audience work education. And I believe everybody has signed in for one of them, and Sofia has already divided us into these three groups. So when we have this break before the group discussions, we will go into these small groups, and Sofia will definitely guide us there, so we are in good hands. And then we come back after, depending what time we have for the groups, we will come back at 12:35, that is the central time, and we will have the summary and closing of the webinar. And I presume that we would be ready to close up at 1:15 central time. So hopefully everybody can stay on the webinar until then, and then we can decide and look also to the future, how we go forward from here. Yes. How are we doing with Collins?
So the email sent. Hopefully it will be in your inbox.
All right. Would it be possible to begin without it first, and then you can, we can roll it behind you?
Okay.
All right.
Where am I? Camera gone as well. There we are. Is that you or me?
Now it's showing. Very good.
Very strange. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about contemporary art, what it means to be contemporary in art. I only have a small amount of time, so but it's a big subject, so it's just a sort of taster, really, and to try and talk about some of the things around the place of outsider art potentially within that. Now, on the whole, when we go to galleries, when people go to galleries, you arrive at the gallery armed with your own sort of received opinions, your own cultural baggage that you bring with you, and far too often, I think, visitors in exhibitions spend more time huddled around the explanatory wall texts and peering at the labels adjacent to the works than they do actually looking at the art itself. That's why I'm showing you a couple of beer cans, which you'll see make the word Dada when they're put together. So when people are doing this, they're looking, of course, for context. They're looking for guidance on how to look, and they're looking for reassurance that the artists who created the work that's in the gallery have a right to be shown in such places, and especially when they find the art difficult. Now, outsider art is in many ways no different to any other art. Look here, a couple of Dan Millers on the left, a fantastic Dutch artist, Paulus de Groot, on the right here, who works in Herenplaats in Rotterdam. Dan Miller, of course, works in creative growth in Oakland, California. Shinichi Sawada, who we've already seen today in Hans's presentation from Japan, and George Widener, another American artist. So just a smattering of work that has at times been put in this frame of outsider art, and quite clearly belongs to the family of visual art. So it's been presented habitually, all of the work that I've just seen, kind of habitually in contexts which see it as somehow essentially different to the mainstream, or different to what Arthur Danto famously called art world art. Now, when Danto talks about art world art, he's referring to the professional art world, specifically the dominant conditions of production, circulation, display, reflection, critique that constitute a recognizable, if not quite rigidly defined system. Now, like any mainstream field, to be in the art world as a contemporary, one has to be engaged in discourse about it and recognized as being so. And this holds as much for a research chemist as a lawyer as it does for an artist. It's a field. To be part of the art world is something a person must work at, not least because to be inscribed in the system of the discourse is to be visible. And once you're dead, to be in the art world, you have to be inscribed in its histories. Now,
sorry, Colin, I missed, I think I have wrong slide now. What should I show now?
No, this is fine. This slide's fine.
Okay, thanks.
To be inscribed in the art world, you have to be part of its discourses, and it's something which some people say it doesn't really exist, or does exist, etc. But it certainly does. It's rule and behavior driven enough to constitute a kind of tottering monolith, if I can put it that way. And you know when you're inside that. Now, professional artists are under pressure to be framed within recognizable art world discourses, which is one of the things that Jean de Buffet raged against in his anti-cultural polemics back in the 1940s and afterwards. So, however much they might see themselves as outsiders or cultural guerrillas, professional artists participate in the art world. Now, the makers of outsider art, by definition, are not part of that art world matrix. They're a mixture of practitioners who share eccentric perceptions in relation to dominant culture that are communicated through the medium of visual art, where those perceptions are kind of lived and embodied rather than the result of the active adoption of some critical position. So someone like George Widener, in the context of the outsider art field, is someone who is absolutely embodying and living the thing that he's representing. It's not some kind of critical stance or that kind of thing. He is engaging in communicating his beliefs about the world, his beliefs about the history of the world, and certain obsessions that he has with dates and apocalypse and the end of the world and all of that kind of thing. Now, we've already heard Hans mention the 2013 Venice Biennale, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I think it's a sort of crucial moment in thinking about the relationship of outsider art and the art world. It really, in many ways, starts 40 years before that with Documenta 5 in 1972, which was curated by Harold Zeman. When Zeman brought outsider art in with contemporary art in Kassel in Germany. But in 2013, Massimiliano Gioni, curator of the Venice Biennale, based the curatorial premise of his whole exhibition, the Encyclopedic Palace, on a piece of outsider art. Here we have two views of the Encyclopedic Palace as they were set in Venice back in 2013. Now, this particular work is quite a large kind of sculptural stroke architectural work by an American called Marino Oriti, who died in 1980, was an architectural model for what would have been a 136-story museum that was to house all worldly knowledge. It encapsulated Gioni's desire, note Gioni the curator, not Oriti the artist. It encapsulated Gioni's desire to focus, as he said, quote, focus on the realms of the imaginary and the functions of the imagination in his exhibition. And Gioni argued that in their practices, artists in general commonly attempt to actively make the world. And he asked, what room is left for internal images, for dreams, hallucinations and visions in an era that's besieged by external ones? Now, the result in Venice that year was a breathtaking accumulation of outsider art, self-taught art, and other art that came from what I would describe as non-art world places that were all presented together with a very rich offering of recognized contemporary art, but without imposed hierarchy, and each one in conversation, so to speak, with the other. So all of the art was all in together. There was no kind of sense that one type of art was less important than another. Everything was kind of on a level playing field visually, which I think was quite important. It got a lot of people talking about outsider art, both the contemporary critics and audiences alike. And again, we've heard reference to critics in Holland suddenly kind of waking up, and this is a common thing throughout the world briefly. Now, it all seemed so contemporary. So how was this? Part of the answer, I think, lies in the curator's creation of a kind of crashing together of a fluid heterodoxy of vision and freeing up from the tyranny of media with an individual commitment to a belief system and personal ethics, and their embedding in the media of choice that's characteristic of contemporary art. In which, of course, in contemporary art nowadays, the artist curator and the curator as artist actually loom large in the making of exhibitions. So we have this kind of, this fluidity, this mixing together of, who is the artist, who is the creator, who is making the work do its work as art. Now, the heterogeneity of materials that's characteristic of much outsider art that arises out of necessity, and is one of my favorite Finnish examples, impulsalminen environments. This heterogeneity of materials has become a common feature of contemporary art world art, which of course arises out of a matter of artistic choice, where Impu is taking all of these things from what he can find around him. The contemporary artist looks for these things and chooses them by choice. A visit to any biennale or art school graduation show nowadays will throw up any number of examples working primarily with what I want to call poor materials. That's not just traditionally inartistic materials, but stuff that might be ephemeral, discarded, substandard, or just plain cheap. Now, in many ways, this chimes with the anti-aesthetic trend, modernism and contemporary art that runs right from Dada through to the present day, as well as the intellectual and highly symbolic vein that's grown out of the 20th century performance art practice, along with its residues and transformations as installation work. And the general feeling that's conveyed in art installations is often that of compulsive, obsessive activity, or of related notes and thoughts gathered together suggestively, but in an unrefined state. Of course, we viewers are not meant to read compulsive obsessive reference in contemporary art as literal qualities, and certainly not to literalize it as medical diagnosis, as is often the case with outsider art. Rather, it's creative strategy, the ordering of parts in ways that make viewers work at meaning that's presumably presupposed but not necessarily openly revealed. Intentionality of content is the key in the art mainstream, and poor materials are employed purposefully. That is, the very materiality of the work is part of its content intentionally. Now, from the curator's point of view, I think we're experiencing an intuition or a recognition of this suspension of judgment and a kind of consent to mobilize anything that's at hand to communicate. It's not so much a suspension of history or a sign of its end as a suspension of judgment and values in order to engage in open conversation and dialogue without the threat of colonization and appropriation that was still the dominant power in modernism. And this is what I'm talking about with Joni's kind of flattening of the playing field in his show. So his Joni's inspired and very contemporary Venice project really shook things up. Shook things up even more with almost everything having something like a family resemblance. I'll leave you with this thought though. Note that most of the outsider art that was on show in Venice, which fitted so well with the contemporary art aesthetic, was produced in the first 6 decades of the 20th century. And Japanese ceramic artist Shinichi Sawada was one of the very few 21st century outsider art contributions to the show. So in a show which looked incredibly contemporary as a whole, where the vast majority of trained professional artists were alive and literally contemporaries of each other, most of the outsider art was made by people who had been dead for some of them quite a lot of years before it came. So I'm showing you one that's alive, very much alive, and very much practicing today. But it leaves interesting questions around how things become defined as contemporary, how things work in contemporary art, and where artists stand, both trained artists and outsider artists, and where the creativity, if you like, or the actions and activities of the curator come and sort of take place in that. So I thought, no answer to questions there, but I thought a bunch of questions which might be significant for the kind of discussion that we're having today and will be having for some time in the future.
Well, thank you, Colin. Very, very interesting indeed. You always bring, you know, the whole world and the art history and the vast history of your knowledge into the table for us. It's really interesting, and I'm very happy that we have been able to record this again, because from the last seminar I remember that very many people wanted to hear your presentations later. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, are there questions for Colin at the moment? Specific questions? You see the chat. Okay, there is one. Hans.
Yes, hello,
Please.
Colin. Thank you. Hi for your presentation. Do you? Your last question is rings with me. So you're saying your position is that Joni selected, moreover, outside artists who have deceased, who are no longer among us. Would you say, is there any conclusion to that position? I'm thinking of, is he avoiding problems on artistry, on behavior, on uncontrolled reactions? What do you think his reasons might have been for that decision?
Well, I mean, one aspect I think is that he was choosing the art to do a job for him, you know, the job that he wanted to do in the Venice Biennale. So the sort of, if you like, the conference of contemporary status with a kind of capital C was something that was brought to the objects in the context of that show, without necessarily thinking about whether the artists themselves were also people who were engaged in you know, kind of a contemporary art conversation. So it's that sort of strange thing where, you know, someone like you know, a mediumistic a bohemian woman like you know, Anna Zamankova, who had been dead for very many years, who was making work out of a particular kind of process, becomes you know, and you know, visually looks amazing, but becomes part of a conversation which is about, you know, contemporary art in Venice in 2013. So the work, you know, Anna Zamankova stays exactly who she is, in the same way as, you know, Rosemary Trockel stays as the person she is, but the art is made to do a job. So in some respects, Joni the curator becomes the conferrer of contemporaneity, becomes the person who says, this is contemporary. So it's a kind of object thing. And you could, I mean, I saw a couple of incredible shows in other venues in Venice that year, which weren't using outsider art, but were using other kinds of objects as well, you know, kind of mixtures of sort of furniture, contemporary art, that kind of thing. And it was like, you know, it was almost like the curators were making installations which were in themselves contemporary art installations. So it then leaves questions about where the individual artworks and the producers of those artworks begin and where they end, and where the curators sort of, if you like, creativity as sort of artist in inverted commas begins.
Very interesting. Yeah, I very much agree that there's a very interesting dialogue between the curators and the artists, and in good and bad. But Thomas, you have a question.
I think what you observed there points in two directions. For the first, of course, it's the classics which are shown, and which a curator like Joni will know. He is probably not that much knowledgeable in the contemporary art field, although in the last years he has done a lot of shows, including also contemporary outsider art, but he's also very keen on classics. And it seems that it also points to the fact that the language and the viewpoints of several classical outsider artists became now mainstream in the way that certain ideas somehow got into society and influenced, of course, also artists. But I do not mean it in a very specific, but more in a general way, that artistic experience is now also including things which are reflected in outsider art. But what I'm more interested in, and what I'm puzzled about as well, also as an experience in myself, is that there was a show years ago in Essen which was called Shadow of the Avant-Garde, and it meant that outsider art and naive art was somehow in the shadow of outsider art, but of contemporary art. But I think what's true is that contemporary art very much influences our awareness of outsider art, so much that we see something and we compare it to something more contemporary, like, for example, Hanne Darboven, and we are forced to say it looks like Hanne Darboven, just better. And this is a kind of very interesting move, I think, also in the kind of appreciation of outsider art, as we always expect outsider art to be more genuine or more original. But we cannot escape, of course, our viewing experience, and the viewing experience forms our view on also the classics and other things. We try to understand things which are puzzling from the viewpoint of contemporary art through contemporary art. And this, of course, means that we misunderstand a lot, but it can open the possibility to have a closer look and then to experience what's really behind there. And in that respect, I found the exhibition of Joni in 2013 quite successful, I must say, that it somehow linked your view through the view of contemporary art to the specificity and the differences of outsider art. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a really interesting point. Part of it is I think the eyes with which we look at things and the way different generations look at things. You know, that the risk of being shot down in flames. I would say, you know, the Dubuffet looked at art brut with the eyes of a late modernist. And the very same images we look at today, we're looking at in rather different ways, which, as you say, quite rightly, Thomas, is very much coloured by our experience of both contemporary art, but also kind of contemporary life, and you know, the sort of the contemporary culture. So yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
Okay. Thank you so much. So if there are no other discussions and pinpoints to Colin at this time, we continue in the discussion groups. But do you think that we should take a 5-minute break now or so? Would you need a stretching or coffee? No? You shake your hands or bow your heads? No, everybody says no. Okay, so we continue. So, Sophia, please help us to get into these groups.
Yes, thank you, Helga. And I will show you the groups where you should be next. But first, I give you some advices that we will divide you to 3 groups, or the one group stays here in this main meeting. So 2 groups are taking to the small group discussion in a while. And you can see, I'm sorry, it's a small print, but maybe you can see. And there are Helga and Pauli Sivonen are leading the first museum staff and curators group discussion. And the next group is Art Studios, and Sirpa Taulu and Minna Haveri are leading the discussion. And the third group is Audience Work and Education. And Raija Kallioinen and Heli Lukkarinen are leading the discussion. And we will now divide you out automatically to your group. And the one group, museum staff group, stays here, so don't panic. And you will be, you don't need to do anything, and you can leave the main meeting on hold. And if you drop off from your small group, you can just join using the same link you got by email this morning. and you will have, I think, 50 minutes to discuss there, and your leaders will stay, will keep watch on the time, and I will put you to the this meeting back, so you don't need to do anything. And when you have 5 minutes time, I will send you a message so you don't, you can say your words in peace. And now I think if you don't have any questions about your group, and I will be here and Suvi will be here with Helga and Pauli in this main meeting. So if you have any problems, I will put maybe I'll put my email again and my telephone number if you have some problems in your group, so you can have that. And it takes about 10 seconds that I divide you to the groups, and some people of you stay here in this main meeting.
So we just stay still. We don't touch anything.
Yeah.
We just wait. Great.
Yeah. But I'm having difficulties with my number having here.
This is always the exciting part, when we disappear and then we come back together and we don't know where we are going. Somebody's taking us.
Now, have a nice chat. And is it, Helga, that we come back here at CET time? Is it 11? What's the time?
I don't know, 35 past.
Yeah.
35 past. So we have about 40 minutes time.
Yeah. So.
In the meantime, if you are hearing, you can already start thinking about the questions and topics you wish to discuss. So I think we can have many topics and discussions, but let's see what are the main in our heads at the moment.
Okay, Helga, I think the small groups are throwing away and you can start, and I will put my camera and microphone off.
Okay, so
but
we are
still here. Heli should be in her.
Yeah.
The team says that you can't be taken to the small group.
Okay, so you work it out somehow. Would it be okay? You can.
I'll try again.
Yeah. Okay, so we are 16 in this group now. And Thomas, I think you still have your hand up, your old hand. So if you don't have a question in your mind, maybe, yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot. So we are 16. Depending how talkful we are, we could, just keep on talking and asking questions. Let's try that. And so I don't have to deal hands with you. But to begin with, maybe we should sort of raise up some big questions that we have in our minds. What should be discussed in this specific group at this specific moment? How do you see, Pauli? Do you have some questions already in your mind, but how would you lead us forward?
I think it would be, of course, best if the participants would tell what they want to discuss about. We have some interesting openings here. For example, the general cooperation between institutions here. Here there are many possibilities to talk about this, and the general what is happening in the field right now. I found it very interesting what Colin told us about the contemporaneity of outsider art, that it comes in a way a little bit behind to the real artwork. If curators want to present contemporary art, it's like outsider art, it is somehow safer for them to pick up these classics of outsider art. But yeah, let's hear what people want to talk about.
Yes, Hans, you have your hand up.
Yes, I was thinking. Oh, I'll lower my hand again. Sorry. I was thinking my interest would be to explore with you how we could create a meaningful, relevant program together, because we have so many experts here, so many different countries. We have great collections, we have great views. The points Colin was raising and Pauli is also reflecting to, I think we still have a lot of work to do, at least in the Netherlands, in respect of contemporary and art museums and the place of outsider art within the whole cultural landscape. So I would love to create an inescapable program, European-wide, in which we could all participate. Either talks, catalogs, exhibitions, traveling, collections, stuff like that. Well, maybe you can start somewhere and then see whether we can create a European program together.
Excellent, thank you. And that's probably why we are here in this webinar, because we definitely wanted to work online and get acquainted, be together and start really thinking a little bigger and more internationally in the future. So Thomas first and then Paula Huhtanen.
Yeah, I wanted to suggest a project which just came to my mind, but also is based, of course, on thinking for a long time already. We have spent a lot of time to somehow introduce outsider art in the art field, and we have used all kinds of curatorial mechanisms and techniques to show it as art. So we framed it and we put it on the wall, and we tried somehow also to imitate a lot of techniques which contemporary art exhibitions do. But in my experience, more and more, it becomes interesting that a lot of outsider art defies these kind of techniques and forms of presentation. And they are a real challenge for the curators and the museums. And I would love to talk about a kind of project which I would like to call just what is it that makes outsider art so different, so appealing, to use a phrase of a Richard Hamilton work, which puts together works from all kinds of collections from all over Europe, which defy the usual way of presenting artworks in an exhibition space, and presents the special appeal and the special message of outsider art. So not to somehow mimicry with other art, but to really get to the point, what's different and what's the big challenge for curators with outsider art.
Interesting, very interesting. All right, then we have Paula, or did you lower your hand? But there was Paula first and then Colin. Are you here, Paula?
Paula was moved to the group three,
right.
sorry.
Okay, so Paula was swiped to the other group.
Yes.
So here's Colin, your turn.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say a couple of things. It's really fantastic that this is terrible. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it yet, but I'm going to learn it properly. The Serdius Museum, yes, the museum that we heard about just now. One of the things that I've known about this museum for, I've yet to visit, is the Roger Ballen show, and I wrote a little bit about that show in a book just recently. You know, it speaks a little bit to what Thomas was saying. You know, the fact that Roger transported a house, or had transported a house from the countryside nearby, literally into the museum, and it was reconstructed and a big installation made in there. And Roger himself is someone who has a very kind of interesting relationship with what we might call outsider art, in terms of his work as a photographer and more recently his work as a kind of installation artist. But I think, you know, what sort of Thomas is saying a little bit about, you know, that sort of presentation or presentation in different ways. There's something really interesting there, both in terms of how we might think about presenting the art as curators, museum directors, and so on as well, but also about how we bring the artists into the museum, where the artists are alive and contemporary and all that kind of thing. And, you know, the very small scale back in Sydney in you know, sort of a decade ago, I ran several shows where I just allowed artists free reign within the little gallery that we had. It was just, you know, 2 small spaces, no rules about what you could do to the walls. You know, if you wanted to sort of do terrible things on the walls, that was fine. So there's no preciousness, which is often a problem that you have in a museum. You know, you mustn't do this, you mustn't do that. And so the artists were much more spontaneous, but even more importantly, much more confident to express themselves as artists. You know, without necessarily having all the you know, the things behind them that the trained artists might have in knowing, you know, what kind of things you can do and can't do and all that sort of thing. So I think one of the things that I would find very interesting is a sort of position where you have kind of co-curation, if that's the right word, or team curation, where you have kind of artists who might be from, you know, kind of an outsider background, being part of curatorial teams in the gallery, of self-curating their own installation work, working with kind of professional mainstream artists, so that you have something like a show which is truly contemporary, in that sense that, you know, you have that kind of that very live thing. So even if some of that work is, you know, kind of classics of outsider art and all that kind of thing, it's nevertheless being curated and installed by teams that are kind of a mix of people who are coming from different places. So you don't have, you know, the kind of, you know, the star curator. You don't have the kind of, and the Joni and the, you know, the Daniel Bauman, much as I love him, it's kind of, you know, that sort of sense of the things are coming together. So it's really the art that's speaking and the artists that are speaking through that sort of teamwork. And I think that could be a really, really sort of interesting project and something quite different and very contemporary.
Yeah, thank you. Before Hans, your hand is up, I would like to bring in a few ideas what we have sort of raised up in Finland when we are discussing this outside art compared or with the mainstream art. We have a problem that there are too few museums that are available or will collect artworks of outside art, ITE Art, and that is the problem, because we are an association and we own the most important collection, but that should not be as it is anymore after 20 years. The museum should be able and should will, and there should be possibilities to collect the local ITE artists, for example. That would be very, very important. How to do it, how to make the museum world understand and have the need to collect, and also document the very fragile environments which can really be demolished after the person is dead or something happens to the land. And the other one is that we tend to talk about the outside art and the mainstream art. It's always divided. It's always, you know, 2 different discussions. And now we are thinking that maybe we should combine them more and stop talking about outside art. In Finland, luckily, we don't use that word outside. ITE art is more feasible, more sort of, it doesn't give the notion of being outside. And so we think that we need more ways to combine, create, to promote, to give scholarships to both artists depending on their professional and their artistic means, not on their background or their training. Definitely not their training or their mental abilities, definitely not. Okay, Hans and then Pauli. Hans, you're
still it's very slow. Sorry. Yeah, this theme Thomas is bringing up and Colin, you were responding to it. It resonates very strong with me. I think we need to break away from the current path of the art world, the contemporary art world, and create our own standards, so to speak. I very much agree. We were playing with that white cube idea and the official art language just to show that what we are bringing is part of a really important art. And I think we need to break away from that. And I have a certain need for theorization. So I know that you are writing a lot and thinking a lot. So I would love to work on a project like that. Basically, we're still in the language of either the salon presentation or the armory show, everything on the same row, or the white cube approach, and we are being criticized for it. And as you're saying, oh, it looks like this and that modern or contemporary artist, and it has its own strength. And I find very interesting what Pauli was saying, and I think this also comes into the equation, that Pauli, you are supporting artists to create a career. So I think it goes much further than just a presentation, although there's a lot to be said to create a new baseline for all of us, apart from what the art world is doing and contemporary art world is doing. So that's something I'd love to explore with you. And then Helga, I'm sorry, but I don't want to go into discussions over the term of outsider art, yes or no. There's no better term for it up to now, and this is a marsh we are walking into, and I think we should, at least for now, stay out of it. Thank you.
Helga, is it me next?
Sorry, yeah, it's Pauli. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. I just actually wanted to comment on what you said about the need that we need to have more museums working in the field of outsider art. And of course, it's like in Finland, this has been a big issue in recent years for, let's say, 20 years or something, because ITE art, or our Finnish outsider art, as we call it, ITE art, it was kind of a very big thing, let's say, 15, 20 years ago or 10 years ago, something that the museums kind of found the ITE art. There were these large shows in Kiasma, was it 2005 or something? And it was like, at that time, every museum wanted to do something with ITE art because it was a great thing, the next great thing that the museums should be doing, working with in a way. Then you mentioned that we would need museums that would work with ITE art collection-wise. And that's always, museums are a little bit slower to react collection-wise than exhibition-wise, because collections are like from here to eternity. And there are, of course, some problems with outsider art that the museums should be able to solve before starting to collect really ITE art, because, well, very material problems, for example, that we don't know how to react with this kind of artworks, because museums are, let's say, old-fashioned museums are working with paintings and sculpture and things like that, and art, outsider art very often is pretty much everything. So there are this kind of practical problems, but mostly it's in our heads, I would say, museum curators and museum directors, that we find it somehow easy to react with the exhibitions when something new comes in. But collection-wise, it's a little bit difficult. It's and also in museums, the people who are dealing with collections, they are normally a bit more like not so progressive as the people who are dealing with the exhibitions. So inside the museums, there might be also some problems in deciding what to do with this thing. But I think you've been doing wonderful job with MSL, like 15 years working this field, and we are opening up, I would say, the museums also.
Have you called me up?
Sorry,
Okay.
I don't know why this. Yeah, Thomas, please.
I think to make museums collect outside art, there is one simple but also very difficult way: make a donation. I mean, it was great that Bruno Deschamps now donated about 1,000 works to the Centre Pompidou. That makes the Centre Pompidou suddenly care about outside art in a unprecedented way. A similar thing was done to a small museum in Germany where the hospital, the psychiatric hospital of Bayreuth, donated 5,000 works of their collection to the Bayreuth Art Museum. And due to the sympathy of the director, to the old director of the mental hospital, she accepted it, and she accepted it as part of modern art. I think it's completely flabbergasting, but she just did it. And she now tries to incorporate it into her program again and again. So if you can make somebody donate such a big collection of quality work, it's possible, of course, to shift things definitely. And regarding your mentioning about mixing outside art with contemporary art, I think as long as the dominant practices and theories of presenting art in art spaces are there, it tends to be an act of colonialization. It's just the outsider artwork is just integrated, but on the cost of speaking for itself. It's integrated because it looks similar somehow and optical appealing. And for my case, I have always the suspicion that, especially with artworks by mentally ill people, it's a new tendency to repress the awareness of the special psychiatric background and the problems of the people. It can be very dangerous. In a way, I would, of course, also applaud to a possibility to show outsider art beside contemporary art. But I think we have to think a lot about ways of doing it to give outsider art its own right and to give it its presence it really needs.
All right, Thomas, thank you. I can see from our list that we have representatives from Museum Gislein, a few of you here, and then we have Monica from Lagerhaus. Would you like to say something before I give the floor to our master men here? Yes, Monica, you're welcome.
Yeah, I think at the end it's yes, the same discussion every time, and we will have to go back to the beginnings. Who has the power to define what is art, and who has the power to define the art market? And not we working with outsider art has to explain what we are doing and what outsider art is and what it means and whatever. And if it's if it could have the same quality as the mainstream art or not, it's a problem. I think that's the chance of our cooperation to get more power, to be visible, international. And I think the only thing is to have power. Then we maybe it's not necessary anymore to have these discussions, because the field of contemporary art is so diverse. Why it's not possible to have a diverse field of outside art? Art is diverse, so it's not necessary to apologize for outside art. It should be, it should be normal to talk about outside art as the same part of art as other fields of art in the big field of art. It's not only one art, there are several ways of art and several, yes, it was compared like a house. And in the big house of art, there are several rooms of kinds of art.
Thank you, Monica. Good points. And then we have our notes from, introduce yourself, please.
Yes, hi to you all. In the context of the preceding points, I have a question for Hans. I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit on the position of the Outsider Art Museum at the Hermitage in relation to the Hermitage itself. It seems to be a place inside a very prestigious kind of old-fashioned art world place, but still a place of its own. How is the relation between the Outsider Art wing or building and the Hermitage itself, and is there an ambition to integrate it, to make crossovers, or is that not possible and not wanted?
Okay, Hans, you should answer this, and then Colin has a raised hand secondly.
Yes. Anna, it's an interesting question. I think it also relates to what we're discussing. I think Monica has a very a valuable contribution, which is saying we should not find excuses for ourselves. We are here. That's what it is. For us, the decision to create a museum inside Hermitage building was exactly taken because it's such a
sorry, somebody has, there's lots of noise coming in from the background.
I think it's a group somewhere.
Yeah, thank you.
So the decision to be part of the program within the Hermitage building was exactly taken because of it's such a mainstream, high quality, unquestionable art place. It's the Kunsthalle. It's an art exhibition hall. It doesn't have any collections of itself. Everything comes from St. Petersburg every time. But so it's the bling bling of the Tsars, and people are like, oh, this is valuable. It's art. It's high culture, and to be in such a place was exactly why we chose to start off there. We have about 150,000 visitors a year, and the Hermitage has about 400,000 a year. So it's a part of the Hermitage public and dedicated public. So we wanted to be at a common ground, literally at a non-threatening place, not be in our own building that we have to try to convince people to come in to see this special art as it is. No, it's just art. We are broadening the field of the art. That's what we are doing. And in terms of crossovers, yes, we have now established real deep ties with them and talk about program, what we are doing, what they are doing. We have proposed several times to donate, to loan works to their shows, but shows are compiled in Russia, in St. Petersburg, with the Dutch team together. So we have not convinced them yet to bring a work from our collection or your collections inside one of the exhibitions, but that's our main goal, to create crossovers. We do common tours. We work together with Kondas, with a health institute, and they have an outsider art gallery where you can buy art. So we spot talents. We work with same volunteers, many of whom have psychiatric backgrounds or disabilities, and we try to convince the Hermitage to work with the same people, to employ them as well on the floor or of ticketing, etc. We have convinced them in certain respects, but it's on the fringes of what they are doing. So I see ourselves as the horse of Troy within the city walls. Yes.
All right, interesting. Thank you, Hans. And then we have Colin and then Monica.
Yeah, just a couple of things to bear in mind, I suppose, as they occur to me as I listen to people talking. I mean, and it's sort of it goes for any kind of art, you know, whether it's outsider art or kind of trained art or whatever. But it's worth reminding ourselves in thinking about all these questions that there's a difference between, let's say, an active artist and an inactive artist, or more crudely, an alive or a dead artist. So there's that sense of history versus the sort of the stuff of life and someone who is alive and lives within a moment. There's also, it's worth remembering the differences between the kinds of venues that show art. So you might be a museum, you might be a generalist museum, you might be a very specialist museum. So it's perfectly conceivable in my mind to have a museum of outsider art, of historical outsider art, and yet at the same time, the art that is shown in that space be shown in other kinds of contexts where it's not talked about as though it's outsider art. So you have that sort of where things specialisms lie, and then outside a museum context, you have the sort of the contemporary art space and the Biennale and that kind of thing, where people are experimenting and doing the kinds of things that you can't do in museums because you have a freedom that you don't have in museums. So I think just kind of trying to keep all those balls in the air is I think intellectually quite useful, because it partly dissipates some of the sort of the kind of the hand wringing that we often have about what you call this, that, or the other, because you can call something in one context and it's not necessarily that thing in another context, and neither are right or wrong, or neither are better or worse than the other, but things can take on different kinds of lives in different contexts without having to sort of leave their old life behind, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, all right. So then Monica.
Yes, I want to continue to give you two examples. In Eastern Switzerland, there is an exhibition called Heimspiel, and the call for the portfolios of the artists to participate to the exhibition mentioned that only professional artists are invited. So any other artists are excluded. Only the professionals. And another example is at the end of August, we will open an exhibition of the family of artists of Müller, Robert Müller, Manuel Müller, Miriam Müller, Gilda Müller. Robert Müller is very well known as the Iron Müller. He participated at the Venice Biennale and also at Documenta, and then he excluded himself from the art market. And this crisis brought him to the psychiatric hospital in Trapani in Sicily and also in Lausanne. And afterwards, he never came back to the art world. And the Müller family was also presented in the Kunstmuseum Solothurn. Now we will present the Müller family in the Outsider Art Museum. And I know that some art historians have problems to include Robert Müller now in the Outsider Art Museum. It's the same theme, the same artworks, but the problems for the art historians is the context of the Outsider Art Museum. But Robert Müller himself excluded himself from the art market. And these are the signs for me, these are the signs of the gap between the outside art and the mainstream art. These are the gaps.
Okay, Hans, do you have something for Monica? Because I also have one. Yeah, you go ahead then.
Yes, Monica, thank you. That's very interesting what you're just saying, and I'm more and more drawn towards the idea that the reception history is at key. So where was it first presented, the works? You mentioned this artist Muller. We have the same Anton Heijboer. Of course, you have Van Gogh. His mental state was hidden for many years. And while the first book which appeared by his sister-in-law, so the wife of Theo, his brother, was on his letters. There was no artwork whatsoever in the book. So it was just a deliberate positioning of the artist as a rational, modern, contemporary artist. Because many people were whispering, but he was in an institution, so is he an artist, yes or no? So this whole conflict is still with us 100 years later. And although biography is not important, biography is extremely important. You have a famous case of a Dutch artist from Eindhoven who had a cerebral attack. He makes the same works after the attack as he did before. His family, his wife is keeping these works apart because it's destroying his reputation. So it's, what are we doing? So we should not walk the walk of the art historians and the contemporary artwork. We should walk our own walk and make them walk with it.
Thank you, Hans. Yeah, interesting, very interesting. Okay, so let me bring one idea that we are discussing here, especially with our association, what we actually do. Despite that we have the collection and we work with museums, we also want to work very closely with artists themselves. And what, for example, the Artist of the Year is a very good example on how we can bring the artist very into the core of planning the year, planning the exhibitions, planning the activities around the exhibition. For example, we are organizing workshops that the outside artists are wanting to do. For example, a chainsaw or Paula painting or whatever, all kinds of weird techniques that the outside artists have created. We invite ITE artists to residencies. For example, now the Artist of the Year worked 1 month in the west coast of Rauma of Finland, and it was such a good example of cooperation with the local municipalities, local people, schools visiting the place, artists visiting him, and whatever happened there. It is really exciting. Also field trips with the museums, so that we can organize bus trips to the places that the artist lives, has their garden, has their world. I remember when I was studying in US as a student, and I was able to visit some of the great outside artists in Georgia, in USA. I never forget that. I never forget when we were sitting in his garden, reading the signs, him playing the banjo, and we young students around. That's the one. That is something that really changes your mind and brings lets yourself to get into to meet the artist, to be there where the artwork is. And also the performances, those can be, very interesting performances and music presentations. So I somehow see that the ITE artists are very willing to perform, to be active, to be around the exhibition, to be around people. And I believe that the audience likes that too. Monica, you have raised your hand. Is it an old hand? Okay, Pauli.
Still on, sorry.
Okay, but we have some people who have not had any word yet. Would there be any ideas or notions or questions from you? I'm not pushing, but if you have something in your mind, we have 10 minutes time. Or if not, then are there some solutions that we could bring into the final discussions? You know, what are the, can somebody sort of draw a line to the main ideas, and would you also be interested in presenting this sort of what we have discussed, the main notions, to the whole group? I'm looking at Thomas, Colin, or Hans. You speak the fluent English, so you can do it maybe for us.
I think maybe we can elaborate on the proposal of Thomas, and I think it gives us many angles and to present to the others to see, look what a project of that scope should contain, and who wants to be in a kind of an initiative group to kind of formulate criteria for each of us to see whether it could work for them.
Yes, and we also should remember that this is the beginning of the webinars. That we have one in the fall and two next year, and all the topics, you know, we continue there. But I would like us to continue in the meantime also somehow. So if we can find out some very specific practical issues and topics and groups, maybe we can continue more closely with each other. Thomas.
Yeah, I would very much appreciate to form a group onto that topic. Just by the way, unfortunately, the next meeting, the next conference of the Outsider Art, European Outsider Art Association cannot take place in an analog way, but we will do a presentation by Zoom, and the topic is about presentation of outsider art. So there are some topics in there which are related to what I suggested. But it would be wonderful if we could form a group of curators working on a topic, maybe for a touring exhibition or so. That would be fantastic, I think.
How would you like to include the residence program into it, so that we could also rotate our artists to each other's places? Would that be nice?
I mean, I would prefer a show which is encompassing historical, classical art and contemporary art. And so, yeah, it would be great to include this residence program as well.
Yeah, maybe combine in the residence program outside artists and the mainstream artists together and see what happens there. So, Pauli.
Yes, I very much agree with Thomas that what the museums should do, it's about co-curation nowadays. It's a big issue in, let's say, mainstream art museum field. And it was also, I returned to this project Art on the Outside, which we were developing. And to tell you the truth, although Tampere lost this competition to Oulu, we are trying to find ways to continue with this project. And one of the main points of the projects was exactly that we would find a good network in which we would co-curate an exhibition that takes place somewhere in Europe and probably also tours Europe. Because quite often when museums are touring exhibition, it's like that's one of the museums, some museum curates it and then tries to send it to Europe and so on. But the co-curation, I think it would mean more in a way that we could hear many voices from different parts of Europe, because this is like for me, coming from, again, mainstream museum field, this seems to be one of the most networked area of museum field. It's only logical, because very often when there is this kind of strong identity of certain field, the many players in the different countries, they seem to find each other in a way. And so our big dream was to produce an exhibition which could be co-curated, which would not be curated here in Finland, but curated together with all these institutions from other parts of Europe, and then really learning together what is European outsider art and what is happening in the field and so on. Not just doing something by us, but doing together and sending it to other places also.
I suggest that we send it to Venice Biennale as well. I think it's time to have the new Venice Biennale exhibition there, right?
Okay for me.
Yeah, okay, then we have Colin and Hans, and we have, what, 5 minutes left?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Paul is saying is, you know, it's absolutely right. I would also, I think, make a plea in terms of this, you know, this project, you know, this proposed thing that is happening now, that we also make sure that at least one aspect of all of this is keeping sight of inclusivity in curation as well as everything else that we're doing. You know, I think that sense of, you know, a curatorial team, not for every project necessarily, all the rest, but there's a place for a curatorial team which is mixed not only by different institutions and different nationalities, but people coming from different places, you know, and in a kind of contemporary art situation, it's often the artist who is also a curator, but there are also kind of curators who are not also artists, and I think within, you know, kind of a kind of an ITER kind of set of positioning, there may well be people in particular kind of aspects who currently do not have access to the kind of, you know, the curatorial thing, you know, whether it's through lack of access to particular kinds of education, or whether it's because of their particular kind of cognitive status, that we could work with those people in this kind of thing to also help to encourage and develop a diverse curatorium to sort of work with this kind of thing, you know. So I think for me that's potentially an important and potentially, you know, quite sort of groundbreaking aspect of the kind of project that we're beginning to talk about now today, where part of, you know, what is often called these days as a curatorium, of a team of curators doing things, may well also be just as diverse as the kind of the work and the artists who are being curated. I think, you know, possibly curationism is one of the last bastions of everyone talking about somebody else and using somebody else without necessarily thinking, well, wait a minute, where's the inclusivity in this? We talk about it a lot with bringing artists together in that kind of way, but the conversation around museological choice and curatorial choice, I don't think is as advanced as, you know, we talk about artists, but we don't necessarily have that same you know, that same kind of diversity within curators. So, you know, that's something that, you know, potentially through kind of education, through you know, kind of mentoring, through people working together as teams, developing something which could be quite exciting and quite impactful in, you know, the contemporary curatorial world.
I completely agree to you, Colin, and I would like to, in Finland, in our scene, I would say that we would like to also include new curatorials, new faces, new people, maybe youngsters who are still looking for the curatorial sort of fields. And we have master students in art schools that the curatorial program is the main theme for them. And I have been hoping to get those people involved more, how to present this world that we are presenting here, so that they can sort of grasp into it and learn and really dig into it. And maybe, you know, in this co-curatorial international work, we could also invite younger students, not very young, but still, you know, who are maybe doing their masters or so, to develop. We don't know what comes out from there, from the digital world, whatever, four-dimensional world. All right, so Hans. maybe you will give the final words, and then we have to decide who presents the idea from our group. So Hans.
Yeah, I think I would be very much in favor. You were earlier asking maybe a theme, and if I hear what everybody's saying, and back to what Monica was stating earlier, I think it's about power, and I think about representation. And if we would be really moving forward, we could say that we look into a creational team by outsider artists themselves. There's a great example from Germany. It was an exhibition called Touchdown in the Kunsthalle Bonn from Rein Wolfs, who's now the director of the Stedelijk Museum. And there's people with Down who curated the exhibition. It was a great exhibition. We tried to bring it over to us, but unfortunately it didn't happen in time. But so it's about power structures, as Colin is saying, as Monica is saying. Thomas, this has been the key. Who decides what is art? This was Monica's question. That's also with us in our field. I think it will be a great team, and everybody's raising hands, so maybe you agree. I hope so.
Okay, very quick, Monica and Thomas. I think the rest are joining us in a minute.
I want to say to Hans, we also wanted to take over the Touchdown exhibition, but the group split it, you know. But with the Fachhochschule, it's kind of university in St. Gallen, we want to bring up another exhibition in the kind of Touchdown. Maybe you and other are interested. Okay.
And Thomas.
And I just wanted to add, maybe it's a question for Siegfried, which will never appear, but as we celebrate outside art as art by uneducated, it seems it could be an interesting challenge to integrate somebody uneducated in curatorship into the curator's team, who is not trained in the usual way, but brings in new ideas as well. But as I said, it's like looking for a Siegfried, which helps us out.
Yeah, in fact, Paula Huhtanen, who is with us here today, she's doing the curatorial work for the summer largest exhibition of Finnish ITE art in the most eastern town in Finland, Ilomantsi, with the Bear Festival. It's really looking excellent and interesting exhibition what she has created, and she is one of our ITE artists. Yes, very good. So let's see, have we got, it's going around. We are 22 here, so everybody has returned almost.
Yes, I've already closing the small groups, and I think maybe somebody's microphone took something from, I think it was Hedi, but she closed her microphone. Yeah. Now I think everybody should be here, and I hope nobody dropped off.
Okay, thank you. We had a very intense discussion and interesting ideas for you to present. But let's begin from the number 3, museum staff and curators. What are your conclusions of the discussion?
It was 3. It was the audience work, right?
Okay.
Audience work and education was our.
Right.
Yes.
Audience
Please,
work.
Our group members, open your camera so that everybody can see that we had a fabulous team, and we talked about audience work and education by very wide perspective, not only very traditional ways, but how to collaborate with grassroots by very equal ways. And also we talked about informing and marketing, because they are very essential part of audience work. But we came in very practical conclusion. We would like to continue our networking together with ECOC cities, so that Tartu and also Tampere, who was in the competition, and Mäntä, Syracuse, Mäntä, and Oulu, and maybe in future also Ghent and Dr. Gisela Museum, that they maybe could continue discussion about that audience work with two practical dimensions with changing artists, because, for example, our ITE artist, who is the ITE Artist of the Year, they are very good with people with mentally disabled problems, and they can make their workshops, and they are very interested also to travel and visit and keep their workshops. That maybe in Tartu in 2024 or even earlier, we could make that kind of visit and collaboration, and maybe we could plan also a path for changing our artists and making their audience work by that way. And then another practical idea was that the digital platforms, that how could we collaborate for developing that kind of digital platforms to present our outsider art environment, but also the artists. And those 2 points, we see that they could be maybe topics of European program, and we could apply Creative Europe funding for that. Please, Heli and others, did we talk something else which you would like to share?
No, you say it well. That was what we discussed.
Yes,
Shortly.
agreed. Yeah. Good summary, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Thank you for the audience work group. And then we move on to the Art Studios group.
Hello, hello. Yeah, we had very small group also, but we had so intensive discussion, and soon we noticed that, oh my God, our time is running out. But the main thing was that there was Inuti from Stockholm, Kondas Centrum, and then Gettoki. And art studios want to get to know each other better, so learn from each other. And we were also very practical. And we come up with the idea that we start to make, especially meet each other first more than already in August or in September, because we start to make a collaborative artwork for the next European Outsider Art Associations conference, which is in Finland and in Hämeenlinna just after a year, 10th of June next year. So when we start to make this collaborative project, we learn to know each other better. And what we got the idea of also for the next year and for the audience is that we can use this augmented reality for the different spaces in the EUA's conference to show greetings from different parts of our art studios. So using all these digital possibilities, and making practical collaboration, we learn to know much more from each other, and all these good practical good practices what every space has. And for the main goal is 2024 and Tartu ECOC City. So when we start already now this collaborative thing, so let's see what we have in 2024. So Carl and Eva, Anna, do you have something more to add?
No, I think it was fine. Exactly what we were speaking about.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Thank you so much for the Art Studios group. And then we have the third group, museum staff and the curators. Well, who wants to bring out the ideas? Would it be Thomas? Would it be you? Please. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we talked about the idea of combining contemporary art and outside art, and to bring outside art into the field of contemporary art, following the discussion with Colin. And we suggested from different sides to follow up a project which could end up in a kind of touring exhibition about the specificity of outsider art, which could be a collaboration in the way that different collections give examples of their work, but it should also maybe encompass historical, classical work of the field of outsider art, but also contemporary art, so that maybe it's even possible to include this program of residencies as well. And in the end, we also discussed if it shouldn't be, and we all agreed that it should be, should include also curators from the outsider art field, so that it's not just curating outsider art from the outside of outside art, but also including specific perspectives of outsider artists, whereby in the end, I said maybe we should even try to include a curator or somebody curating from the field of outside art who is not educated in curating, so that he could bring in the perspective of the outside even into the curating job, because we always cherish the uneducated and the outside of the art field of outsider art. So maybe we should try to include perspectives in the curatorial field as well. And in which way we now go on, that wasn't clear yet. I think maybe we could build up an internet group or something like that to follow up the discussion. But just by chance, or maybe not that by chance, the next conference of EOA, which unfortunately will only take place virtually, will also go about the topic of presenting outsider art. So we could follow up the discussion there as well. But I would appreciate if we could find a way to stay in contact and in exchange about this idea.
Thank you, Hans. Thomas, anybody else would like to share the notion? From my group or from any other groups, or you want to cross over and ask questions or continue with some topics or make them in? If somebody has any very concrete idea how to continue after the summer vacation, except the EOA conference. When is it, Thomas? When does it take place?
The date is not fixed yet. We will announce it in July, but it will probably be in September.
Okay, all right. So we cross over the Paris. Yeah. All right. So, but hopefully then in Finland, after 1 year, we have all got the vaccinations, and the corona is totally blown to the wherever sky somewhere there in behind us. But
wait, I think Colin has question.
All right, Colin.
Thank you. Sorry, it's really about the studios. I wanted to be in that group as well as the group I was in, because I'm really interested in the specialized studios. It's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and various studios being connected with. And part of my question, since we're talking about the contemporary art and all that kind of stuff, I suppose, is just to again, sort of put a marker in the sand, which is really about agency. We talked a little bit, Monica, especially in our group, about power and power in the art world and that kind of thing. And part of that is the agency of the artist, the artist's ability to put themselves in places where their art can be seen and so on. Of course, within the specialized studios in particular, it's very clear that at various degrees of possibility, the artists who are working in those studios without some kind of assistance are not able They don't have the agency to do the things that the kind of fully able artist is, you know, and agency has become really, really important in a lot of studios around the world, both in Europe and the States and in Australia, as ways of kind of minimizing, if you like, the disabling mechanisms that exist in the art world. You know, so there are now great examples of artists coming out of studios who have their work in the Museum of Modern Art, whose work is being used as designs for, you know, kind of Marc Jacobs and this kind of thing. People who are in kind of mainstream art competitions as finalists along with other people. And what has really allowed that to happen is that the work, which was already great, has been, that those artists have been assisted in being able to get into those places in ways that they never were able to before. And part of, for me, the definition of kind of outsider art is that kind of, you know, that not being able, for whatever reason, to kind of crash into the art world, you know, gate crash the art world. And so, again, I mean, thinking about the studios and what the studios might be doing and the conversation that we're having around that, I think there's also a kind of connected conversation about agency. There's a connected conversation about inclusivity, about diversity, and how we sort of minimize the disabling kind of elements in anything, so that someone actually, you know, you have something that's more like a level playing field. So not a level playing field that a curator has decided, but a level playing field that has been kind of much more enabled through the agency of those artists.
Very true, very true. I agree. I'm thinking of the agency part. What happens here with us, with our association? We had an interesting discussion with Heli and our partners, with one of our ITE artists who is doing these chainsaw sculptures. And he's very, very skillful. He does these workshops. He's a very liked person. And so he was able to get commission for a cruising ship while they were building it. So he was invited to sculpture those the bars and the restaurant areas with his chainsaw, with his images on site. And he completed one ship, and now he's continuing to the second ship. Imagine what the possibility he's getting, and he's so humble. And anyway, so we had a discussion with her just 1 week ago, and a long discussion on how to help him to understand the value of his work. You know, what could he ask if somebody buys something from him? What are the, you know, what are the rules of the art world in such of the commercial artwork? And we feel in our association that also the media relationships is something that we need to promote. We have to help. We have to be the agents there in between. So in fact, we are moving more and more in our association to be a sort of an agency towards the ITE artists in Finland, but also internationally. That's important also. It is quite difficult for many of the ITE artists, as it is for mainstream artists to become international, to raise voice internationally, to become artists who can be invited and such. Of course, there's the language problem sometimes, but not always. Definitely not always. Yeah, I'm sure we share these ideas. All right, let's see, what time is it? Okay, we would have some more minutes if we have if we can, if it's not too hot and if you're not too hungry. Or otherwise we can say that we have we have run through the program well, and everybody is still here. Let's see, we had one has also only escaped from our group, so it's a very, very good saldo here. Pauli, would you like to say something to conclude? And Raija also.
Thank you very much for this very interesting discussions. It's been really wonderful to listen to you and learn from you. I would say that the whole outsider art field knows everything about diversity and inclusivity in a way, because it's in the DNA of this field, because the art itself that it's focusing on is about that thing. And then on the other hand, because there is so strong identity in this group of stakeholders working inside outsider art, it seems to have also kind of this kind of own bubble also, in a way that we are speaking about mainstream art and we are speaking about outsider art, and on the other hand, someone said today that the whole art field in a way is divided. You can divide it in any way you want, and then we were of course also discussing about power structures in our group, which was very important because this is where these divisions come from in a way. And now that we have right now the exhibition of Banksy here in Mäntä, there are many analogies. Of course, it's like a commonplace thing to discuss the issue whether street art and graffiti are some kind of ITE art. But what I recognize is the same kind of like willingness to constantly consider your own identity and your what you are doing, what others are doing, and so on. But the most important thing that I think that we've been discussing today is the importance of all kinds of crossovers, or as Colin was saying, that keep the balls on the air, because when they are on the air, things are happening in a way, no matter who is keeping them on the air and from which side things are coming and so on. But yeah, it's been very interesting and looking forward to learning more from you.
Thank you, Pauli. Raija, you are the grand old lady of the seminar.
Yeah, and also inviting all you together. And
so please conclude.
I will conclude it so that many of us knows each other from early history, but it has been so nice that there are also new faces, and this means that there is continuity, and it delights me a lot. When I will retire, I can see that there is younger generation coming. And also this series of webinars, it will continue. This was a starting point of this discussion with you who are invited. But the next conference, next webinar will be in November 11th and hosted by GAIA Museum. And then next discussion in May 22 and the last one in November 22. And I really hope that you all will keep this connection, because so we can go forward. Now we got the first ideas and we refreshed our friendship, and now the next steps will go to more practical level, and it's very exciting. Thank you so much, and waiting for exciting future with you.
Thank you, Raija. And please, somebody, is it you or Sofia, who will explain what happens to this documenting this recordings, and then if we are able to share the slides or the pages?
We thought that we haven't got your promise of any who gave your lectures that we could share it on public platforms. But is it okay for you, Hans and Colin and Esa and Pauli, to everybody, if we share it, the link to these participants of this discussion?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. If it's okay, then we will share it to participants, and you can look also later if there was something you didn't understand or you want to continue discussion with some smaller groups.
Okay, I think it's time to say goodbye for now and move on for the afternoon meetings or whatever we are drawn into. And we from Finland wish you all a very, very good summer and hope to see you somewhere there, maybe on the scene, in the museums, on the streets, wherever, festivals. And welcome to Finland whenever you wish. And we will host you as always. But if not before next June, we will see you definitely in 1 year.
Thank you very much for organizing this. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you very much.
Bye. See you.
See you.
Thank you.
Kiitos.
Hey,
Thank
the
you
Finns.
and bye.
Hey, the Finns, keep online. Let's wrap it up.